Snow hissed off the granite as the cannon run ended. The valley threw the A-10's growl back in ragged echoes, a metal animal circling somewhere above the clouds. Powder smoked where the 30mm had chewed the ridgeline. Splinters of ice and shale rained down on her helmet. Sergeant Chaktika Fr. Camille Durand pressed herself flatter behind the boulder, breath burning in the 10-degree cousin air. Her left glove was already red, not from herself but from the seal lying 6 meters downslope. Collins, his plate carrier, ripped, snow turning pink under him. His eyes were open, tracking her, trusting her to do something impossible. On her chest, the French radio and the USPRC fought for space, both crackling with different chains of command. Above, the Warthog pilot, call sign Hogsward, was asking for a new mark, voice tight from holding in the stack too long over Manpad's country. Camille lifted the orange panel, then stopped, fingers rigid. If she marked the target close enough for him to scythe the machine gun nest on the opposite spur, she'd also paint the slope where Collins lay exposed. If she didn't, the seals pinned in the frozen drainage below her would stay pinned, bleeding in a valley with no medevac corridor. Her hand trembled over the panel. "Durand, say mark," the pilot started, cut to black. 10 hours earlier, 0542 Zedin, forward operating site Mistral, Savoy sector, French Alps. The briefing room smelled of coffee gone sour and wet nylon. Outside, dawn had only started to gray the saw-toothed ridges above the small forward sight, wind plucking at the comms masts like a cold hand. Camille stood at the edge of the table, helmet hooked to her vest, letting the Americans finish their slide deck. Collins was younger than she expected for someone leading a mountain raid. Broad-shouldered, shaved head, eyes that moved like he was still in a dark room. He tapped the chalet photo. "Target building here. 1 ingress, 1 egress, high terraces east and west. We hit at 0700 local, in and out before the tourist helicopters warm up." He didn't look at her. No one had introduced her properly. Just "French medic will accompany" from the liaison captain, as if she were additional baggage. Camille cleared her throat. "Your egress route crosses a civilian rescue corridor," she said in English. "Your air can't fire there without French clearance." That got his eyes. "We've got a JTAC," Collins said. "We can clear our own fires." "Not inside there, no fire. Not this close to chalets." She kept her voice even. "You will need a French voice on the net." The SEAL beside him, Ramirez, shifted, amused. Collins wasn't. "Ma'am, with respect, this is a surgical hit. We don't plan on needing CAS." Nobody ever planned on needing it. Camille felt her jaw tighten. Images rose. 2 Italian carabinieri, white with cold, kneeling over a man whose blood had spread until the snow looked rusted. The medevac had circled, then turned away because the wind over the ridge was wrong. She'd arrived 10 minutes too late. She set the memory down where he could see its outline. "Last winter," she said, "operators from your side came in without someone who knew these valleys. A man bled out because he waited for a helicopter that couldn't land. I won't let that happen again in Savoy." Silence held. The French liaison captain glanced between them, surprised she'd said it out loud. Collins folded his arms. "You saying we're going to get shot up?" "I'm saying mountains make liars of timetables." She tapped the topo on the table. "Snow, wind, civilians. If someone is hit and you have to move him down, I know the rescue frequencies, the patrol huts, the gullies that don't avalanche, and I can clear your air faster than Paris can call you back." The room listened now. Even Americans respected speed. He hesitated, the small, annoyed kind of pause from someone recalculating risk. What's your rank again? Sergeant, 27th Brigade d'Infanterie de Montagne, combat medic. I climbed that sector last month. He exhaled through his nose. You jumped from Helos? Yes. You run PRC 117? Yes. You shoot? When I have to. She let him see she didn't think it was the clever question he thought it was. He looked to the liaison. She on the manifest? She can be, the captain said carefully, and ROE will be easier if she's there. There it was, the practical door. Collins nodded once, decisive. Fine. You ride with Chalk too. You stay behind the breachers. If things go loud, you listen to me. I listen, Camille said. What she didn't say was that if someone started dying in the snow, she would listen to the bleeding first. The men began to move, closing laptops, slinging gear. Through the window, she saw the shapes of 2 helicopters on the pad, rotors tied down against the wind, mountains shouldering the sky behind them. The day was sharpening. Ramirez passed her, voice low. Didn't think the French would come freeze with us. She met his look. We don't like burying people in our mountains. Outside, the cold hit her cheeks like glass. She tightened her chin strap and felt the weight of what she'd just claimed. She had put her name between their casualties and the bureaucracy behind her. If the valley turned bad, if the weather rolled, if the chalet hid more guns than the pictures showed, she would have to make calls no sergeant was supposed to make. The helicopters spun up, rotors thudding against the thin alpine air. Camille climbed aboard with the SEALs, settling among men who still weren't sure she belonged. The ridges waited, white and indifferent. The MH-60 lifted into the alpine dark like a fist pushing through fabric. Snow streamed past the open door, turning the cabin into a tunnel of white. Camille sat belted beside the door gunner, boots braced, head set tight over her beanie, ruck between her knees. The cold in the cabin was a different kind of cold, rotor-chopped, metallic, smelling of hydraulic fluid and cordite ghosts. Below them the valleys fell away, black and steep. Ahead, ridges rose like closing jaws. Wind's picking up over the saddle, the pilot's voice came over ICS, controlled but not casual. Mistral, Hawk 1, we may need to shift to alternate LZ Bravo. Collins, strapped on the opposite side, looked toward the cockpit, then toward the map on his thigh. LZ Bravo was the safer bowl, sheltered, but nearly 2 clicks from the target. On skis or snowshoes, 2 kilometers in this powder, at this altitude, loaded with breaching gear and casualty kit, wasn't a stroll. And it meant any wounded would wait longer in sub-zero air. Camille flicked her mic. Hawk 1, this is Durand, French medic. What's the gust spread on Alpha? Durand, gusting 25, occasional 35, crosswind component ugly on the last meters. She pictured the slope. She'd studied the imagery. Elze Alpha was closer, a flattened meadow above the tree line, exposed, but within direct line of sight to the chalet terraces. From Alpha, she could run a casualty back in minutes. From Bravo, it was triage in the open. Collins cut in. We can work from Bravo. Camille felt the seconds thinning. Negative, recommend Alpha, she said, sharper than she meant. Casualty movement is primary in this terrain. We land far, you freeze and bleed slow. There was a beat of silence in the cabin. It wasn't normal for an attached medic to counter the assault lead in the air. The crew chief leaned forward, looking at her across the cabin, eyes narrowing with a kind of professional curiosity. You worked this valley, Sergeant? Yes. He keyed the cockpit. Pilot, crew chief, if she says the snow will hold, we can try Alpha. We flare early, Collins's jaw flexed. He couldn't ignore both the local medic and the crew. The pilot came back. Copy. We attempt Alpha. One shot. If it's dirty, we go Bravo. Outside, the world brightened. The helo's nose light washed a slice of snowfield, blowing crystals sideways. The aircraft banked, rotors biting strained air. Camille tightened her harness, felt the lift surge and then soften as they bled speed. 10, 5, drift right, hold. The helicopter slammed onto the snowpack harder than planned, skids punching through crust. The cabin lurched, snow blasted in. But they were down. Engines stayed high, rotors hammering. Go, go, go! The seals poured out into knee-deep powder, silhouettes instantly swallowed by blowing snow. Camille followed, ruck on, rifle slung. The air knifed her cheeks. High above, stars were already veiling behind, incoming clouds. She dropped to a knee, yanked her small antenna up, and powered the US radio while keeping the French set on her chest, hot. 2 voices to juggle. She needed the aircraft overhead to know friendlies were on the ground. Hogsward, this is Durand. French ground element at Alpha. Raiders landed. How copy? A calm American female voice answered through a hint of engine noise. Durand, Hogsward 2-1. Good copy. I have you on time. Weather's closing north to south. ROE says I don't shoot near your chalets unless your folks say it's clear. Affirm, Camille said, breath fogging. Stand by for clearance when we have eyes. Collins slogged over, snow up to his thighs, nods short and clipped to his men as they formed up. He bent toward her, voice low enough the rotors almost swallowed it. I say Bravo. You say Alpha. You gonna keep doing that? She met his stare, snowflakes stuck on her lashes. When it will save minutes. Minutes are lives in this cold. He looked past her, down the slope. Through the drifting snow they could see it, a warm rectangle of light halfway down the valley. Target chalet, awake earlier than it should be. He grunted. Not agreement, not yet. But he didn't tell her to shut up. Behind them the MH-60 lifted, rotors kicking snow over their heads, then banked away into the dark like a shadow peeled off the mountain. The wind rushed into the space it left. Camille adjusted her pack straps and fell in with the seals, boots squeaking in the dry powder. They had landed close, which meant when someone went down, she could actually reach him. The descent from LZ Alpha felt like walking down the inside of a glass bowl. Steep walls, sound carrying too far, every step telegraphing presence. The seals moved in staggered file, snowshoes whispering, rifles up. Below, the chalet glowed against the white, a perfect square of warmth in hostile terrain. Camille kept to the left side of the column, eyes not on the house but on the terraces above it. Alpine chalets were never just houses. They were built under ledges, beside wood stacks, near cable runs, perfect places to hide rifles. And this target was supposedly a weapons node. Ramirez signaled, 2 fingers, eyes, front. Collins raised a fist. The file froze. It started with a single crack from the upper east terrace, too flat and too early. A round slapped into the snow just downslope from Collins, throwing white into his face. Then 2 more shots, then the harder rattle of a weapon whose owner wasn't worried about noise discipline. Contact East Terrace, someone hissed. The plan, breach, clear, secure broker, fractured for a second. The chalet door was still 120 meters away, downhill, perfectly visible. If they ran it now, they'd be running through a cone of fire. Camille dropped behind a drift, heart thudding, radios pressing into her chest. She could see the problem immediately. The sentry was shooting downward, but the real threat was the shallow ledge just above him. Trees, rocks, enough concealment for a second gun she couldn't see yet. That ledge overlooked the route she'd used to haul any casualty back up to the LZ. Collins pointed toward the chalet, ready to drive the assault anyway. Momentum mattered in raids. "Viking," she called, using his call sign because it cut faster. "That terrace overwatches your exfil. If you clear house first, I can't move wounded." He shot her a look. This was not the time to debate. Rounds snapped again, lower now. One seal answered with controlled bursts, chewing bark off a pine near the shooter's muzzle flash. From her radio, Hayes's voice. "Durand, Hogsward on station. I do not have PID on your shooters. Civvy structure and backdrop. Say again, do you need guns?" Camille's breath smoked. ROO. She couldn't just say yes. There was a chalet window right behind the shooter's arc. "Negative guns, Hogsward. Stand by." She turned back to Collins, spoke fast. "If he hits your point, man, I have to treat him in that open slope. That slope is dead ground from you, good ground for them. We clear the terrace first." Collins weighed it. House or hill? The house held the objective. The hill could kill the team. He cursed, then jabbed 2 fingers upslope. "Bravo, hook east, clear that terrace. Alpha holds overwatch on the chalet. Medic, stay behind Bravo." The team split like water around a rock. Camille followed the element cutting toward the terrace, boots punching through crust, calves burning. Snow spattered her trousers from incoming rounds. The shooter above shifted fire toward them, distracted. A seal tossed a flash up and over the lip. The detonation was small in the open air, but enough to stun whoever was up there. The first 2 operators vaulted the terrace edge, rifles barking in short, disciplined pairs. "Clear," came the call. Then, "To Ekia." Camille scrambled up after them, lungs hot from cold air. The terrace was a narrow platform hacked out of the slope. 2 bodies in winter gear sprawled, rifles still warm. From here she could see the real problem. Not this platform, but the next one, slightly offset, hidden by a bulge of rock. A perfect place for a belt-fed. She keyed Hayes. "Hogsward, Durand. I have hostile terraces above target, but cannot confirm all positions clear. Civilians possible on low ground. Hold fire." "Copy, holding." Downhill, Alpha element had eyes on the chalet now, breacher ready. Lights inside were moving. Whoever was in there knew the game was up. Collins's voice on the net. "Terrace secure, pushing house." Camille looked once more at the upper rock bulge. She didn't like what she couldn't see. She slid back down to rejoin the main element as they flowed toward the chalet, snow spraying around their boots. They were back on plan, objective first, but the mountain still had 1 gun hidden. They were barely 50 meters past the chalet when the valley snapped shut. The seals had moved fast. Breach, clear, bind the 1 survivor, grab the hard drives and a crate of odd-caliber magazines, then spill back out into the white. Camille exited last, checking the dead with a practiced glance. No survivors to complicate things. The cold hit harder now that adrenaline was thinning. "Drainage route, move!" Collins called, voice clipped over the team net. The drainage was a shallow trough that ran south, between 2 ribs of rock and scattered pines. It looked perfect. Downhill, shielded from chalet windows, a natural slide toward exfil. Camille liked it because it was sledding terrain for a sked. She could picture dragging a casualty here. Then the first long burst raked across the trough. Snow leapt around them in angry little fountains. The sound was different, sustained, heavier. MG high right. A half-second later, from the opposite ridge, came the telltale whoosh crack of an RPG, badly aimed but close enough to make everyone duck. "Contact right ridge, possible second element left," Ramirez shouted. They dove for what cover there was. Low shrubs, wind-carved drifts, rocks too small to trust. Camille went to ground beside a snow hump, ruck digging into her spine. 2 SEALs dragged the prisoner down with them. A third man, Keller, grunted and rolled, hand to his thigh where a groove of blood showed through his pants. This was the exact place she did not want to have a casualty, in the bottom of a V, flanked. Collins checked his angles, cursed. "They're crossing fire. We stay, we die." But moving meant lifting Keller and running him through the same beaten zone. Another RPG whooshed, smacking into the slope above and showering them with ice. Camille snapped to her French set first. Higher could hear, and the no fire was still in place around the chalet. "Secteur Savoie. Ici Sergent Durand sur objectif. Nous sommes accrochés. Tir en enfilade des crêtes. Demande ouverture, feu CAS sur crête nord et sud. Civil non visible." She forced herself to sound controlled. At the same time, she keyed the U.S. radio. "Hogsward 2-1, Durand. Troops in contact, valley ambush, 2 ridges. Current ROE. No fire near chalet unless French clears. I am clearing. Stand by for mark." Hayes's answer came faster than before, edged now. "Durand, Hogsward. I'm overhead. I can see heat, but chalet is in my backdrop. I need hard clearance or I stay cold." Keller's breath hissed beside her. Blood was already painting the snow under his leg. Not arterial, but in this cold, wet clothes became a killer. Collins crawled over, eyes hot. "We can bound out. Leave the casualty for a minute." "No," Camille said. "He'll freeze. And if you move without suppression, you lose 2 more. That gun's gonna walk us in." Then I bring the gun down. That was the choice. Risk an early call and own the ROE, or let the SEALs try to muscle through a crossfire. She chose. She pressed the French radio to her mouth. "Feu casse autorisé sur crête nord, coordonnées à suivre. Aucune présence civile constatée. Je prends la responsabilité." There was a pause. Paris, Lyon, whoever was listening could object. None did. The magic words were there. French eyes on target, French responsibility. To Hayes, "Hogsward. French authority granted for Ridge North. Danger to friendlies if no strike. Gun run preferred. Friendlies are low in the drainage. You will hold South Ridge until we move." "Copy, Durand. Nose cold on south. I'll make a pass north. I do not like your angles." Neither did she. The valley was too narrow. Even a clean 30mm run could scatter. "Make it short," Camille said. "We just need their heads down." The A-10's engine note grew, a distant, hungry whine building above cloud and snow. Even pinned, even bleeding, the SEALs heard it and stilled. Air was coming. "Guns, guns, guns," Hayes said, voice calm. The Warthog's cannon growl rolled down the valley like tearing sheet metal. On the north ridge, snow and rock erupted, the MG's steady rattle breaking into fragments. The fire on that side stopped, men suddenly much more interested in not being shredded. "Move now!" Collins shouted. "Bravo, pull Keller! Alpha, cover!" 2 SEALs grabbed Keller under his armpits, boots scrabbling, dragging him down the trough. Camille stayed beside him, one hand on the wound, the other keeping her radio tight. They ran bent, half-crouched, using the seconds the gun run had bought. But the South Ridge was still live. As they reached the next curve in the drainage, rounds smacked the snow near Camille's foot. Hayes came back on. "Durand, I can't prosecute south without better mark. Chalet's still in my glass." Air was available. But geometry, ROE, and stone made it ugly. Snow was a bad place to bleed because it tattled on you. Keller's trail was a long pink smear along the drainage, even though Camille had cinched his thigh tight with a tourniquet and stuffed gauze to stop the oozing. He gritted his teeth, face going the gray of people fighting cold and pain at the same time. "Keep him moving," she said to the seals hauling him. "If he stops, he chills." Above them, the south ridge kept spitting. Not full auto, but punishing, accurate bursts. The kind of fire that knew the valley shape and was just waiting for someone to raise a head too high. A round cracked a sapling near Camille, and it whirled into the snow. Hayes came across the net, breathing a little harder now. "Durand, I can see your south ridge shooter shadowing you. I have chalet behind him. If I hose it from up here and I miss by a hair, I'm punching holes in French real estate. I need your mark." Camille looked ahead. These shots drainage kinked left, offering a slight rise. A place where, if she stood, Hayes could catch the color against the white. It was also the most obvious place for the ridge gunner to watch. Collins slid in beside her, rifle up. "J-Tack's hit. He can laze in a minute," he said, nodding back toward a seal who was propped against a rock, working one-handed to free his designator. Blood dotted his sleeve. "A minute is too long," Camille said. "They'll adjust." "Durand," Hayes said again, firmer this time. "I am low enough that if you give me orange, I can work from that. But I need it now." There it was. The two paths. Stay low, wait for the American to finish his setup, bleed time and maybe people, or stand up where a machine gun could stitch her and give the pilot what she needed. "I will mark," Camille said. Collins grabbed her sleeve. "That's exposed." "I know." She shrugged him off, slung her rifle behind her, and tore open the flap on her kit where the bright panel sat folded. The cold bit her fingers instantly. She picked the rise 10 meters ahead, the one with the cleanest skyline, and ran. Snow dragged at her thighs. The ridge gunner saw the motion. His next burst walked down toward her. She dropped behind the low rise, heart hammering, panel in her fist. "Hogsward, panel coming up, south of Friendlies, 100 meters short of your threat. Friendlies are in the low drainage, don't shoot long." "Copy, looking." She sucked in air and snapped the panel up over her head. For a second she felt absurd. One small human rectangle of orange in an ocean of white while men shot at her. Then the ridge spat again. Snow kicked around her boots. A round smacked the rock in front of her and sprayed chips into her cheek. "Got you, Durand," Hayes said, relief audible. "I have your panel, I have your line. I am rolling in from north to south. Keep that thing up." Camille kept it high, shoulder trembling. Behind her she could hear Collins shouting at his men to stay down. The wounded J-Tack was still working, but he was now the backup, not the primary. The pilot had chosen her. Above the clouds, the A-10 growl built again, this time tighter, angrier. Hayes's voice turned procedural. "Friendly's danger close. Short burst. Guns, guns, guns." The sound tore the valley in half. 30mm rounds don't just hit. They arrive with authority. The south ridge erupted in dirty white plumes where rock and ice shredded under the fire. The gunner's position vanished in a cloud of pulverized snow. The echo rolled for long seconds, trapped by the mountains. "Off dry," Hayes said. "Assess." Camille dropped the panel and flattened, lungs heaving, fingers numb. She peeked over the rise. The slope where the gunner had been was a scar now, no return fire. But she could still see shapes farther along the ridge, moving. Whoever had set this ambush hadn't put all their men in one spot. She keyed up. "Good effect on target, Hogsward," South ridge position suppressed. Multiple movers further east along same line. Copy multiple movers. I can make another pass, but I'm burning. Your weather is coming in faster. Of course it was. Mountains made liars of timetables. Camille scrambled back down to the drainage, boots sliding. Collins stared at her like he was recalculating again. "You're supposed to be our medic," he said, not angry, just surprised at the size of the risk she'd taken. "I cannot treat them if they are dead," she said, wiping snow and rock dust from her cheek. "So I make it possible to treat." Ramirez, still covering upslope, barked a short laugh. "I like her." Keller groaned as the seals settled him again. Camille knelt, checked the tourniquet, still tight. Blood slowed. His skin was colder now. "We need shelter for him," she said. "Somewhere out of the wind." "We need to get out of this bowl first," Collins replied, scanning. "Ambush is broken, but not gone." Haze came once more, lighter now. "Durand, I can hang a little, but you call it fast from here." It was seconds, not minutes. They had bought a sliver of movement. They found a bend in the drainage where snow had drifted higher against a low rock shelf. It wasn't cover, but it was at least a backstop against the wind. Collins waved the team forward past it, pushing the fight down valley. Camille stayed, dropping to her knees beside Keller. He was shaking now, not from fear but from cold trying to own him. His lips were pale, breath fogging in short bursts. The tourniquet on his thigh had done its work, darkening the fabric above it, but his pants were wet where he'd slid. Wet was bad. "I'm fine," he muttered, which meant he wasn't. "No, you are not," Camille said, already pulling her trauma shears. "I fix this." Overhead, a single rifle shot cracked from somewhere on the east side, harassing fire. A seal farther down shot back, keeping heads down. This was the dangerous in-between. Not enough fire to call in another run, but enough to interrupt delicate work. She cut the trouser leg above the wound with quick, brutal snips. No need to bare everything. Exposed skin in this cold was its own injury. She checked the tourniquet, tight, high, no blood creeping past. Good. The wound itself wasn't catastrophic. It was the environment trying to finish what the bullet started. March, she reminded herself, but modified for mountains. Massive bleeding, airway, respiration, circulation, hypothermia, head. Here, H was already punching for first place. She twisted, grabbed the small silver emergency blanket in her kit, and a foam pad rolled on her ruck. "Help me lift him," she called to Ramirez, who'd stayed back to cover. Ramirez slid in, rifle on sling, eyes still roving upslope. "We doing this? Here? If he lies in snow, he cools faster. We move him behind that shelf." She pointed to the slightly deeper pocket 2 meters back, just far enough to be out of the direct line from the ridge. "Ridge is still taking shots." Then we move fast. Together they hooked hands under Keller's shoulders and dragged him, boots squealing on ice. Snow rasped against her sleeves. A round hit somewhere above, spitting powder over her helmet. She hunched instinctively, but kept moving. Once in the pocket, the wind dropped by a third. Sometimes that was all you got. She slid the foam pad under his back. Insulate from ground first. The snow would suck heat faster than the air. Then draped the emergency blanket over his torso and good leg, tucking it under his plate carrier. The crinkle sounded loud in the cold. Keller hissed. "You French are bossy." "Yes. Breathe slow," she said, checking his radial pulse with gloved fingers, too fast. She leaned close. "Listen. You are not bleeding now. You are not dying now. You will stay warm, d'accord?" his eyes focused on her, on the certainty in her tone. Copy. Another shot split the air, closer this time. Ramirez swore, fired 2 quick shots back. They're probing. Camille keyed her U.S. radio without stopping her hands. Viking, this is Durand at CCP-1. Casualty Keller stabilized, tourniquet effective. I need you to keep them moving, or they will start walking mortars in. Collins answered, breath ragged. He was moving. Copy, CCP-1. We're pushing. You good there? For now. But he cannot stay long. She switched to the French net. Savoie Durand. Premier blessé stabilisé. Nous sommes toujours sous feu intermittent. Avez-vous dernière météo? The reply came with the flat certainty of Alpine forecaster. Durand, front neigeux renforcé, visibilité dégradée sous 2 heures. Hélico difficile, après 0800 locaux. She exhaled. 2 hours before the mountains closed their fist. Back to Keller. She pulled out a small chemical heat pack, precious weight she'd refused to leave behind, and cracked it, working it warm between her palms before sliding it near his core, under the blanket, not on the wound. Won't this make me sweat? He asked. You will not sweat, she said. You will stay warm enough to arrive. She looked at his face. You have people waiting? He blinked, surprised by the question. Yeah. Then you stay awake. Down valley, the SEAL's gunfire moved farther away. Good, the fight was shifting. Above, the A-10 was a steady presence, orbiting, but Camille could hear it in Hayes's voice when she checked in. Fuel was not infinite. Durand, Hogsward, came the call. Weather advisory from control, cells building on your western ridges. You're gonna lose ceiling sooner than planned. I know, Camille said. We will. Move. She checked Keller one more time, breathing controlled, color not worsening, then looked to Ramirez. We turn this into CCP. Anyone else hit comes here first. Short time only. You running this now? Ramirez said, half grin. In the snow, yes. He nodded, accepting it. That was the shift. She wasn't just the French voice for ROE anymore. She was the person keeping their brothers alive in a place trying to kill them. She cinched her pack, eyes on the darkening sky over the peaks. 2 hours. Less, maybe. Every casualty from now on had to be treated and moved before the valley became a white wall. The drainage had gone quieter, but it was the uneasy quiet of fighters repositioning. Sound in the mountains lied. Shots bounced. Footsteps vanished in powder. So Camille trusted the radios more than her ears. She crouched beside Keller's makeshift CCP, one knee in the snow, both radios up. The US PRC was clipped to her vest, the French handset pressed to her ear, cables crossing her chest like vines. Breath fogged the mics. Durand, poste de commandement Savoie, the French controller said, voice crisp, office warm. Vous avez fait ouvrir le feu KS très près d'une zone touristique. Confirmé absence de civils. She glanced downhill. The chalet they'd hit was dark now, smoke from breaching still hanging low. The ridges where Hayes had worked over the embouche were bare of movement, at least from here. Affirme, Camille said. Aucune signature civile. Tir nécessaire pour dégager éléments alliés au contact. À pause. Nous rappelons les règles d'engagement. Vous n'êtes pas autorisé à déléguer le feu américain sans vue directe. She almost laughed. Vue directe. As if these mountains let you see everything. As if there weren't 3 folds of terrain between her and half the enemy. Reçu, she said instead. She lowered the French radio, raised the US one. Viking Durand. French sector is twitchy. We need to be precise on next targets. Collins's reply came with background gunfire. Precise is cute. They're moving on our east flank. If I don't get that suppressed, we're not getting your CCP out of here. There it was. 2 chains, 2 priorities. HQ wanted clean paperwork. Collins wanted his men alive. Hayes wanted coordinates before her fuel hit bingo. As if on cue, Hayes called in. Voice tauter now. Durand, Hogsward, I have 3 heat signatures using the trees on your east ridge like they own it. I can rake that line, but the chalet village is still in the south quadrant of my pass. I need you to tell your people it's clear. Camille rose enough to scan with her binos, elbows braced. The east ridge was a comb of pines and rock. From her angle, she could see the upper trunks, the slope, but not every hollow. Snow drifted, obscuring. It wasn't perfect. Durand? The French controller pressed in, her other ear. Vous confirmez visuel sur la zone? Sans visuel, pas de feu. If she said no, Hayes would have to stay cold, and Collins' flankers would be free to creep closer, maybe find overwatch on her CCP. If she said yes, she was certifying more than she could truly see. This was the exact weight she'd wanted earlier, to be the French voice on scene. Now it sat on her chest. She took it. Sa voix, ici Durand. J'ai yeux sur le versant est. Aucune activité civile. Feu autorisé sur coordonnées transmises par appui aérien américain. Je prends la responsabilité. There was a long second. They heard the words. Je prends la responsabilité. It meant if something went wrong, they'd come looking for the sergeant in the snow, not for a captain in a warm office. Bien reçu, the controller said, a shade cooler. Feu autorisé. She switched back. Hogsward, French authority granted, East Ridge, danger to friendlies. Short gun, no overrun to the south. Hayes exhaled into the net. Relief and respect mixed. Copy, Durand. Rolling. You're making a lot of friends today. Camille ducked, hand on Keller's blanket. Make it fast. The A-10's pass came in slantwise, cannon barking shorter this time, disciplined. Snow leapt along the east ridge in a broken line. Whatever had been moving there stopped moving. Collins's voice followed almost instantly. That's it. That's what I needed. We're pushing past the bend. He came into view moments later, leading a stack of SEALs back toward the CCP, face flushed from cold and adrenaline. He slowed when he saw her still kneeling there with both radios. You just cleared that? He asked. Yes. Your people good with that? No, she said honestly. But I said I had eyes. He studied her, then looked at Keller under his silver blanket, at the drag marks in the snow, at the valley that was slowly closing in with cloud. I owe you one, he said quietly. We all do. You owe me that you keep moving, she said. I cannot hold this CCP if they push again. He nodded, signaled his men forward. In her ear, the French controller came back, more formal now. Durand, nous notons que vous avez pris plusieurs décisions de tir exceptionnelles. Restez dans le cadre. La météo se dégrade. She knew what he meant. We are writing your name down. She pushed to her feet, slung her ruck, and looked up at the sky. Cloud shelf lower, light flattening, time bleeding away. They moved again, this time not under the panicked scramble of ambush, but under the tight, brittle urgency of people watching the sky darken. The wind had a different edge now, carrying fine, stinging snow. Somewhere above the cloud shelf, Hayes was still orbiting, but even her engine note sounded farther away. Camille led the way downslope, not up. The drainage forked ahead. One arm climbed, toward a higher bench that offered excellent fields of fire and a view back toward the chalet basin. The other dipped into a shallow depression, dotted with low pines and a fallen tree, just enough to break wind and line of sight. She had picked it the moment she saw it. Lower, sheltered, maybe even within a pilot's I-can-try zone if a helicopter wanted to risk a hover. Collins saw her angle and swore. "No, up, we take the bench." She kept walking. "Your bench is perfect shooting for them also, and the wind hits it full." "Yeah, but I can see them coming." "You will see them coming while I try to keep fingers from freezing off," she snapped, then caught herself. She stopped, turned to face him in the blowing snow. "Listen, CCP must be somewhere a rescue can attempt. This hollow, they can try. That bench? No pilot in winter will hover there." The SEALs paused around them, boots squeaking, breaths visible. Keller, on his improvised sled of poncho and rope, groaned as the man hauling him stopped. Collins's eyes were rimmed red from wind. "We're in contact, Durand. I can't have them shooting down into us again." "They will shoot down on your bench too," she said more evenly. "But there, we have no cover from wind. Your casualty will cool. You want him alive when your bird comes? Or you want a good field of fire?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. This was the split. Tactical dominance versus medical survivability. On flat desert, maybe you could get both. In a narrowing alpine valley with weather rolling in, you chose. "I know the rescue profiles for this sector," she said, softer. "I know which teams have hoists, which will come on skis. They will try for a hollow like this. Not a bench." He looked past her at the dip. Small trees, a fallen trunk, snowbank. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. Ramirez, dragging Keller, spoke up. "Boss, I vote warm over tall." A second SEAL nodded. "Yeah, Cap, we can perimeter the hollow." Collins blew out a breath that smoked in the cold. "Fine, we do it her way. But I want eyes up on that bench." "Deal," Camille said immediately. She wasn't here to win arguments. She was here to keep people's cores at 37 Vendikaisen. They slid into the hollow. At once the wind dropped, the sound of it turning from a roar to a muffled hiss. Camille pointed. "There, lay him on the pad. Blanket, then snow wall." She was already yanking out her compact shovel, the extra 400 grams she'd argued with herself about packing before dawn. Now it earned its place. She began throwing snow into a low berm on the windward side. Two SEALs joined without complaint, chopping at the drift with entrenching tools, building a crude shelter wall. Keller was set down on the foam pad again, his emergency blanket retucked, another layer thrown over his legs. His color stabilized. In the lee of the snow wall, it was almost tolerable. Collins knelt beside her as she worked. "You gonna do this for every guy that gets hit?" "Yes." "You're gonna run out of daylight." "We are already running out of daylight." He huffed something like a laugh, short and tired. "You're stubborn." "In French we call it responsible," she said. Then, because she owed him clarity, "I will not choose an easy place to shoot over a possible place to survive." He met her eyes and finally nodded. The argument wasn't fully healed, but the edges were sanded. He could see her logic, even if it cost him his preferred terrain. A burst of distant fire cut through the lull. Ramirez, posted higher to watch the approach, called down, "Movement northeast spur! They're trying to walk around us." Of course they were. Enemy fighters weren't stupid. They'd seen the team dip into cover and were already angling to look down into it. Camille keyed up Hayes. "Hogsward, Durand. Be advised, enemy maneuvering to flank from northeast spur, elevation above our new CCP." Hayes answered, thinner now. Copy, Durand. I can cover for a bit longer, but your weather is punching me out soon. Camille looked up. Clouds lower, snow finer. They had won a better CCP, but in doing so, they'd stayed in one place long enough for the enemy to adjust. The northeast spur that Ramirez had called out wasn't just a ridge. It was a ridge with human fingerprints. Halfway along it, tucked against the slope, sat two small, dark rectangles, mountain cabins or ski outbuildings, closed for the season but still very much civilian property. And behind them, just high enough to see down toward the hollow where Camille had built her CCP, was the flicker of muzzle flash. Of course, she muttered. They picked the house we cannot shoot. Collins slid in beside her, breathing hard from scrambling up to her observation point. That's a no fire, right? Yes, Camille said, unless I say I see no one. And do you? From here, low in the hollow, she could see shadows, roofs, the vague shape of stacked wood. But windows, doors ajar, a kid who'd stayed behind in his family's cabin? She couldn't tell. Hayes's voice cut through, flatter now with fuel and weather. Durand, I have your northeast structure. I have your muzzle flashes. I do not have a clean backdrop. I am Winchester on fancy stuff. I got gun. I will not strafe through a cabin I can't clear. French HQ, on the other net, had already sniffed the problem. Durand, on voit des constructions civiles sur vos images. Tir, casse, interdit, sans confirmation, terrain. They were aligned for once. No eyes, no guns. Then I get eyes, Camille said. Collins caught her arm. You can't walk up there. They're watching. I do not walk to them. She pointed to a side gully that climbed diagonally toward the spur, using a line of low pines as partial concealment. I climb to where I can see behind the cabins. I tell her it is empty. Then she shoots. That puts you higher than us. Yes. Alone. Yes. He stared at her like he wanted to argue but couldn't find a tactical alternative that didn't involve getting someone else shot. Finally, he said, Ramirez goes with you. She shook her head. If they hit CCP while I am gone, you need your shooters. Then take Liu, he said, picking the smallest seal in the element, light on his feet. He can at least drag you back. Liu grinned like mountain climbing under fire was Tuesday. Let's go, Doc. They moved. The gully was narrow, snow up to mid-calf, crust breaking under every other step. Camille kept low, rifle slung across her chest, radios tight. The wind hit them harder as they gained elevation, throwing stinging flakes into their faces. Shots cracked from the MG position, probing, not sure where they were yet. At a notch in the slope, she belly-crawled the last few meters, snow soaking her sleeves. From here, higher, she finally had the angle the valley floor didn't. She could see behind the cabins, doors shut, no cars, no human tracks since the last snowfall. Roofs clean. These buildings were empty winter boxes, nothing more. She snapped a set of quick photos with the small device on her vest, proof for later, then keyed both radios at once. Savoie, ici Durand, en surplomb des chalets nord-est. Confirme. Aucune présence civile, bâtiment fermé, pas de traces fraîches. Je déclare zone dégagée pour tir d'appui. To Hayes, Oxford, Durand, French observer on site, me. Cabins are empty, closed for season. You are cleared hot on MG behind them. Friendlies are lower in the hollow. You shoot high. Hayes's relief was obvious. Copy, Durand. Cleared hot. Northeast ridge, single pass. I'll keep it tight. Liu tapped her shoulder and pointed. Muzzle flash again, now lower. The gunner had spotted something. A round cracked into the snow 2 meters to their right. showering them. "Time to get small," Liu said. They flattened. The A-10's engine note swelled. Then the cannon ripped the air, shorter bursts than before, like a seamstress making careful cuts. Rounds walked just above the cabins, chewing the rock and snow where the MG had been braced. One of the cabin roofs took a spray of snow, but no visible damage. The firing from the ridge stopped. "Good hits," Hayes said. "No collateral. You're welcome, France." On the French net, the controller came back, a fraction less stern. "Bon tir. Notez l'heure et vos coordonnées pour le rapport. Merci, Durand." Merci. As if this hadn't been her skin on an exposed slope. She and Liu slid back down toward the hollow, half glissading, half running. At the bottom, Collins was waiting, scanning the ridge. "You get it?" "Yes," Camille said. "Cabin's empty, MG gone." He shook his head, a reluctant respect edging in. "You didn't have to do that yourself." "I did," she said. "Because if I said no fire, your casualty died cold. And if I said fire without seeing, some family asked why we shot their cabin." He considered that, then nodded once. "Okay, Sergeant." Above them, the clouds finally dropped low enough to smear the ridgeline. Hayes checked in one more time, thinner than ever. "Durand, weather's about to push me. You better start thinking ground only. Snow thickened the way bad news does. Slow, then all at once." One moment Camille could still see the curve of the drainage and the torn-up ridges where Hayes had worked them over. The next, the mountains blurred to charcoal smudges, and the sky lowered until it felt like the valley had a ceiling. She checked Keller again. His skin was warmer than before thanks to the shelter wall and chemical pack, but he was in no shape to walk. The second casualty, a SEAL who had taken frag in the shoulder and ribs during the chalet clearance, was conscious and angry but breathing shallow, every jolt stealing air. Neither could make a climb in this cold, in this snow, under fire. Collins stomped into the hollow, snow on his shoulders, goggles pulled up. "We've got to move," he said without preamble. "They're going to use this weather same as we are." "Some of us can move," Camille said. "Some of us cannot." He glanced at Keller, then at the other wounded. He knew. He just didn't like it. "We take everybody." "If you take him now," she said, nodding at Keller, "you drag him through deeper snow, uphill, in worsening vis. He chills. His wound bleeds again. He crashes. Then you have a bigger problem, but in a worse place. And if we sit still, the guys on that spur come back. Then leave me a team to protect them." He stared at her like she'd suggested splitting the atom with a multi-tool. "You want me to cut combat power in a valley that isn't secure? I want your wounded to be alive when your extraction comes," she said, voice steady. "You move light and fast. I stay heavy and slow." He paced once in the snow, then looked up at the sky like he could will it to clear. The snow blew sideways now, classic alpine front. Even if a helicopter wanted to try, it would be instruments and luck. Over the U.S. radio, Hayes called in, strain obvious. "Durand, Hogs Ward, I am at the edge of my loiter. Control advises RTB, weather's eating the valley." Camille keyed up. "Understood. We will be ground from now." There was a pause.